Chapter 13. The Flood. Alice stared down at Mango, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The small, crowded study was still thick with the smell of ozone and spilt wine. "A plan?" Alice repeated, her voice muffled behind her rough fabric scarf. She glanced at Mal, who was still leaning heavily against the wall, rubbing his bruised ribs. "Mango, Severin is gone, but that entire mountain is still swarming with his army. What exactly is your plan?" Mango sat perfectly upright amidst the shattered remains of the mahogany desk, his golden eyes burning with a dangerous calculating light. "It is a multi-tiered operation," Mango projected smoothly, his mental voice commanding absolute attention. "We must sever the connection between the siphon in the pit and the colossal steam engines powering the portals above. But as the Scotsman astutely noted, simply smashing the cables with a broadsword could trigger a catastrophic explosion of dark magic." "So we drown it," Poppet chimed in, hopping gracefully up onto the edge of a surviving bookshelf. His yellow eyes were fixed intently on Mal. "Scotsman. In your 3 years of wandering the multiverse with that silver compass, have you ever opened a doorway directly underwater?" Mal froze, the half-empty bottle of spiced wine slipping slightly in his grip. His weathered face paled. "Once," Mal murmured, his voice thick with a sudden terrible memory. He looked down at the silver and gold device resting securely in his leather pouch. "Early on, I was trying to find a realm of pure light. Instead, I opened a tier at the bottom of a freezing, violent ocean. The pressure was immense. The water blasted through the veil like a cannon shot. I was washed off my feet and barely closed the portal before things got worse." He looked at the 2 black cats, his blue eyes widening in sudden, horrified understanding. "You want me to open that portal here?" "Not here in the study," Mango corrected, his tail twitching with excitement. "Upstairs, in the domed chamber, directly over the massive steam engines that power the entire stronghold." Alice gasped, the sheer scale of the destruction taking shape in her mind. If Mal opened a portal to the bottom of the ocean inside that mechanized hub, the sheer volume and pressure of the water would instantly flood the engines, short-circuiting the entire system. It would annihilate Severin's portal network and instantly cut the power to the siphon, draining the Cats of Bast. "The timing, however, must be absolutely flawless," Mango continued, turning his golden gaze back to Alice. "We cannot risk drowning our kin in this forsaken place. The pit is deep. If the water cascades down the stairwells before they are free, it will become a tomb." "So we split up," Alice realised, her blood running hot with sudden adrenaline. She checked the buckle on her slender sword, her exhaustion entirely forgotten. "Precisely," Mango nodded, pacing a tight circle on the stone floor. "Alice, you must return to the harvest room alone. You will find a way in. Once the door is open, I will project my thoughts to the guardians within. I will tell them that you are a friend, that you carry the resonance of the briarwood, and they must follow you back to this study." "And while she's doing that," Mal interjected, his voice steadying as he grasped the full tactical brilliance of the plan, "I take you two up to the domed chamber." "Hopefully we can do this quickly and get back down the stairs to get out with all our kin," Poppet projected, jumping lightly from the shelf to the floor. "And where are we going to go to when we come back here?" Mal asked, tightening the straps on his stolen leather armour. "We can't stay in Severin's study once the mountain starts flooding." "We open a portal back to my home," Alice explained, her voice surprisingly steady beneath her heavy cowl. She looked at Mal, her eyes bright with fierce determination. "To the briarwood. We will all be safe there." Mal stared at her for a long moment, the flickering torchlight catching the resolve in his expression. He gave a single, sharp nod. "All right," Mal murmured, kneeling down and unbuckling the flap of his heavy leather backpack. "But I will need your help with tuning the portal to your home when we return to the chamber." I've never been. You will have to concentrate with all your heart on your home to help me open the portal." Alice nodded, understanding the massive responsibility she now carried. Mango and Poppet didn't hesitate. They stepped gracefully into the dark leather bag, curling tightly together at the bottom until they were completely concealed. Mal secured the buckles, hoisted the heavy pack onto his broad shoulders, and drew his massive broadsword with a soft, deadly hiss of steel. Alice looked around the ruined room. Her eyes landed on the ornate silver cane lying discarded on the dusty stone floor where she had dropped it. She walked over and picked it up. The metal felt unnaturally heavy in her hands, and it made her feel instantly uneasy. The residual corrupting static of Severin's magic was still buzzing faintly along the shaft. But as she gripped the silver head, she thought she might be able to put it to some good use. With determination in her eyes, she looked at Mal. "Let's go." Mal gripped his broadsword tighter. "Let's bring the sea." Stepping out of the study, they slipped silently back out into the narrow, dimly lit corridor. The heavy, suffocating heat of the inverted castle washed over her instantly, carrying the sharp scent of ozone and the distant, agonizing mews of the captive cats. When you are in position, Mango's mental voice echoed softly in her mind, a comforting, familiar presence in the terrifying dark. "Let me know when you have breached the dungeon holding our kin." They walked silently down the claustrophobic corridor, the harsh clank of distant armour echoing off the vitrified brick walls. When they reached the chamber above the captive cats, they didn't speak. With a final silent nod to Mal, Alice turned right, heading toward the padlocked door that led down to the harvest room. Mal turned left, disappearing into the shadows as he began the long, treacherous climb back up to the mechanized dome. Alice was entirely alone. Alice tightened her grip on the heavy silver cane, her leather boots making no sound on the uneven stone as she crept toward the locked door. Hanging from the heavy iron handle was the massive rusted padlock Mal had pointed out earlier. It was thick and heavy, designed to keep 1,000 magical creatures imprisoned in the dark. Alice didn't have a key, and her slender sword wouldn't even dent the rusted iron. But she did have the dark magician's cane. Alice took a deep breath, raising the heavy silver-headed stick. She didn't want to hit it too hard and cause another deafening explosion of magic like she had in the study, but she needed to break the iron. She swung the cane, bringing the heavy silver head down hard against the rusted shackle of the padlock. A sharp, bright spark of violet energy hissed where the silver met the iron. The impact sent a painful jolt up Alice's arms, but the corrupted magic within the cane did its work. The rusted iron shackle cracked violently, the metal splintering with a sharp, echoing snap. Alice quickly pulled the broken padlock free, tossing it onto the dusty stone floor. She grabbed the heavy iron handle and hauled the door open. She stepped through the doorway, finding herself at the top of a steep, narrow, curving staircase that wound sharply downward into the gloom. She descended quickly, her boots making almost no sound on the uneven rock. The oppressive, stagnant heat grew stronger with every step, the smell of ozone and stale straw thick in her lungs. When she reached the bottom of the stairwell, her heart sank. Set deeply into the rock wall was another heavy wooden door, this one secured by a massive, thick wooden drawbar resting across the frame. Severin had made absolutely sure his prisoners couldn't escape. Alice didn't hesitate. She shoved her shoulder against the heavy timber, groaning slightly under the weight as she slid the wooden drawbar across the door and deep into the carved drawbar hole in the wall. With a final heave, she pushed the heavy wooden door open to the feline captives. A wave of sour air hit her instantly. Alice paused, her heart breaking at the sheer scale of the misery before her. Down in the gloom, lying listlessly on the dirty, straw-covered floor, were the cats of Bast. As the heavy door groaned open, 1,000 pairs of dull, exhausted golden eyes turned slowly to look toward her. The conditions were deplorable. Near the heavy door, Severin's forces had haphazardly dumped a massive pile of coarse sand, a foul-smelling makeshift litter box for an entire army of magical creatures. Running along the far wall, fed by a dripping iron pipe, was a shallow, murky trough of water for them to drink. They were being treated like livestock, kept barely alive just so the vile, pulsing metallic box in the centre of the room could continue to siphon their magic. Alice felt a hot flush of anger burn through her fear. She pushed her heavy leather cowl back off her head, revealing her face. "I'm inside," Alice projected mentally, focusing her thoughts as hard as she could, hoping the cats in Mal's backpack could hear her over the deafening hum of the machinery. "But I need time. They're incredibly weak. It's going to take a while to get them all moving." "Understood," Mango's voice echoed back instantly, his mental tone surprisingly gentle. "Hold your position, Alice. I am speaking to them now." Alice couldn't hear what Mango was saying to the captive cats, but she felt the sudden profound shift in the air. Down in the pit, the collective sea of golden eyes suddenly brightened. The low, agonizing mews stopped. Slowly, shakily, the cats began to push themselves up from the dirty straw. They looked toward Alice, their ears swivelling forward, the dull, cloudy film fading from their eyes as the resonance of the briarwood washed over them. Mango was telling them she was a friend. He was telling them she was their way out. Alice offered them a small, encouraging smile, stepping to the side of the stone stairs to give them room. "Come on, kitties," Alice murmured softly, gesturing toward the open doorway. "Let's go home." The first cat, a sleek, painfully thin female with a notch missing from her ear, took a hesitant step toward the stairs, then another. Within seconds, a slow, quiet river of black fur began to flow up the stone incline. They were weak, their steps unsteady, and their coats dull, but they were moving. They flowed past Alice, their thin bodies brushing gratefully against her leather boots as they made their way out of the terrible harvest room and toward the stairs leading up to Severin's study. Alice stood guard by the door, watching the massive exodus, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. "They're moving," Alice projected up to Mal and the cats. "We're on our way." While Alice watched the massive exodus of the weakened cats of Bast, Mal was standing at the edge of the colossal mechanized dome. The heat in the upper chamber was stifling, the massive steam engine in the center of the room thrumming with a deafening rhythmic roar. The heavy cables and copper pipes sparked and hissed, powering the dozen metallic rings bolted into the rock walls. Mal kept his head down, the rough fabric scarf pulled high over his nose, allowing the shadows of his deep leather cowl to obscure his face. He moved with a heavy, purposeful stride, pretending to inspect the massive iron winches near the tunnel entrance. The domed chamber was surprisingly quiet. Only a few scattered warriors were milling about the massive space, most of them exhausted raiding parties returning from the vast storerooms down the hall. "We are in position," Mal projected mentally, his hand resting casually on the hilt of his broadsword. He glanced toward the wide descending stone archway they would need to use to escape. "We need to choose a ring." "The one nearest the stairs," Poppet projected instantly from inside Mal's leather backpack, his mental voice sharp and tactical. "We need a quick exit as soon as the portal is open. If we leave the veil torn at the bottom of the ocean, the water will not just destroy the engine. It will permanently flood this entire stronghold." Mal nodded minutely. He altered his path, strolling casually toward the closest metallic ring to the descending archway. It was currently dormant, the heavy cables attached to it humming faintly with idle dissonance. "Put us down near the ring," Mango instructed smoothly, his golden eyes undoubtedly wide with anticipation in the dark bag. "Between the portal and the stairs, we need to escape down. But do it naturally, Scotsman. Do not look suspicious." Mal stopped a few feet from the dormant ring. He let out a loud, exaggerated groan, pulling the heavy leather backpack off his shoulders and dropping it onto the dusty stone floor with a heavy thud, as if he were an exhausted mercenary resting his gear. "Tell us when you are ready," Mango projected, the heavy leather of the bag shifting slightly as the cats prepared to jump. Mal turned his back to the few warriors scattered around the dome, shielding his actions with his thick woolen cloak. He reached into his leather pouch and pulled out the silver and gold device. He didn't hold it up to his eye. He kept it low against his chest, gripping the intricate metalwork tightly in both hands. He closed his eyes, forcing the roar of the steam engine out of his mind. He focused entirely on the terrifying memory of the freezing, violent pressure of the deep ocean, the crushing weight of the water, the total absence of light, and the sheer unstoppable force of the sea. The flawless blue crystal in his hands grew ice-cold, flaring with a brilliant pulsing azure light that leaked through his fingers. "I have it," Mal whispered, his voice tight with strain. "Portal weavers, now!" The heavy leather flap of the backpack flew open. Mango and Poppet didn't just hop out. They exploded from the bag, moving as a blur of sleek black fur. They darted to either side of the massive metallic ring, their dark coats instantly igniting with brilliant, blindingly bright geometric blue lines. But as they moved, a towering warrior carrying a large wooden crate emerged from the vast tunnel of storerooms. He stopped dead in his tracks. His dark eyes widened in shock as he saw the two glowing black cats standing by the dormant ring and the supposed mercenary clutching a blazing blue crystal between them. The warrior let out a harsh, guttural cry of alarm in a language Mal didn't understand. He dropped the heavy wooden crate, the wood splintering loudly against the stone floor, and reached for the massive iron axe strapped to his back. "Speed things up, portal weavers!" Mal yelled, abandoning all pretense of stealth. He didn't draw his broadsword. He just turned and sprinted toward the descending archway. The warrior's shout had done its job. The scattered mercenaries in the domed chamber spun around, their hands flying to their weapons as they realized the stronghold had been breached. Half a dozen heavily armored brutes began to charge toward the metallic ring. The cats didn't flinch. Their golden eyes flashed and their glowing azure runes flared with terrifying intensity. The air inside the massive metallic ring shattered violently. The portal didn't just open, it erupted. With a roar that entirely drowned out the steam engines, a colossal, explosive blast of freezing, high-pressure salt water blasted out of the metallic ring like a cannon shot. The sheer force of the ocean was devastating. The charging warriors, caught directly in the line of fire, didn't even have time to scream. They were violently swept off their feet, their heavy iron armour dragging them helplessly across the domed chamber as a massive surging wave of black water slammed into the colossal steam engine in the centre of the room. The engine hissed furiously, massive clouds of scalding white steam filling the air as the cold salt water flooded its gears and shattered its corrupted copper pipes. Poppet, who was standing on the side of the portal furthest from the escape stairs, ducked low as the violent blast of water rushed over his head. Moving with impossible feline grace, he darted under the roaring jet of the ocean, his paws barely touching the slick, flooding stone floor. He joined his brother, who was already sprinting for the archway. Mal was already halfway down the stairs, his boots slipping dangerously on the wet stone as the freezing salt water began to cascade down the steps behind him like a waterfall. "Alice!" Poppet projected, his mental voice cutting sharply through the deafening roar of the flooding stronghold. "We are coming!"